This is Jim Strauss. I'm going to be reading to you a novel called 30 Days Has September. It's a novel about my experiences in Vietnam, which I was able to reassemble over time with written correspondence. I wrote home every day while I was there. But it's also a novel that sometimes gets placement, details, and other things not exactly correct because it's been so long ago, even though I first wrote this and put it in my closet in 1970, a year after I got out of the hospital. The beginning is called The First Day. The door opened. It was a steel door about 6 inches thick, or so it seemed. It hit with a jarring thud when its heavy flat surface pivoted down and smacked upon the mud. Sunlight shot in like a wave of heat, followed by a wave of real heat. The air-conditioned inside of the armored personnel carrier, likely to be my last until my tour was over. I had no weapon, no pack, or jungle boots. I was new. The civilian airliner had landed at Da Nang, Vietnam, offloaded 100 uniformed men like me, and then left without the crew ever getting off. No waiting passengers got aboard to leave the airport. An F-4 Phantom fighter lay burning at the end of the runway. We'd all seen the plane while we were aboard, getting ready to land. The flight attendant said it was probably an old plane they used to train firefighting teams. I hunched over, moving toward the torrid heat and light streaming in through the hole made by the back of the armored personnel carrier falling into the mud. We'd rode maybe 5 minutes from the airport. Nobody told us where we were going or what we were doing, so I simply followed the silent procession of men out into the mud, dragging my government flight bag at my side. I was an officer, but I'd taken the single gold bars from my utility jacket after being told by the plane crew that the shiny bars weren't worn in combat areas. There were 6 of us who'd gotten into the waiting carrier. There had been other carriers, but I had no idea where they'd gone, because when I stepped outside, there was only mine left. A tall Marine Staff Sergeant stood facing the rear of the vehicle, about 15 feet away, on more solid ground. His boots gleamed in the sun. His spit shine on each was perfect. His uniform was short sleeve, Class A in khaki, with pleats ironed so starchy sharp they looked dangerous. He unaccountably wore a DI instructor's flat-brimmed hat with a small leather tassel dangling from its stiff edge. His hands were on his hips, his elbows sticking out, looking as sharp as the pleats running up and down the front of his shirt. "Gentlemen, welcome to Vietnam," was all he said, before waiting a few seconds for his words to sink in, and then turning and heading off on a path leading through the thick undergrowth. It was the first day of my time in Vietnam. I was unafraid, my emotions blocked by wonder. The light, the heat, the thick cloying mud with a burning phantom sending up tendrils of black smoke snaking across the sky masked everything else I might be feeling. The plane I'd gotten off of was from America, and it was gone, with America gone with it. I moved along the rough-hewn paths, my flight bag knocking into every hacked-off branch end I came upon. I was nobody. I didn't feel like a Marine officer or even much of a citizen, and I sure wasn't in California anymore. I was a slug moving through a forest that looked like something out of a bad horror film, following an enlisted man who I was supposed to outrank, but who apparently didn't think so, toward a destination nobody told me about. I was not disconcerted. It was deeper than that. In only moments, I was lost in another world that there had been no warning existed and could not have been imagined. We came out of the bush to see a wooden structure in the distance. "Gentlemen, the Da Nang Hilton," the staff sergeant informed us, without stopping or turning. Just before we came up to the building, he stopped. We stopped behind him in a row, as if we were in a squad, he commanded. "It's got a moat," one of the other men said, pointing at the 5-foot wide stretch of water dug between us and the building, or at least liquid. A thick plank was extended out over the water to allow access to a ratty 5-story wooden structure beyond it. "That's a benjo ditch, not a moat," the staff sergeant indicated. "No bathrooms here, except for the ditch." He stopped and ushered us up one by one onto the thin plank. They'll come for you when they come for you, he said to our backs before walking away after the last of us was crossing the wood blank. There was nothing Marine Corps about the shanty of an open barracks. There were no windows or even walls. Wooden pillars held the wooden floors up with a big thin roof covering the whole affair. There were so many bunks that it was impossible to count them from the outside. A corporal sat at an old metal and rubber desk taken from some earlier war supply house at the end of the last plank. File, the bored corporal said, holding out his hand toward me. I'd heard him comment to the man in front of me, here's a tag. That's your bunk. Break the rack down and make it with clean stuff and from the cabinet down at the end. No lockers. Keep your own stuff close. There'd been no sir in any of his delivery to the guy in front of me. There was none to me either. Tag, he said, handing me a metal-edged paper tag with the paper 26 written on its white surface. First floor, officer country. You heard the rest. I wondered why officers were quartered on the first floor. I presumed as I made my way back to rack number 26 that it was probably because the banjo ditch aroma would be more available. The rack was filthy when I found it. The place was nearly full with men recently returned from combat patrols or whatever, I presumed. Most were covered with mud. None looked like they'd showered or washed in days or maybe even weeks. I hauled the old sheets to a bin near the end of the narrow row that led to my bunk. I tried to talk to a few of the other officers who lay without sleeping atop their muddy beds. They would only look back at me like I was some animal on display at a zoo. They would not answer, not one of them. I finished making my bed, deposited my flight bag under my cot, and then huddled with my back against the corner support. The bunks were 4 high with a slatted ladder going up to the top one. The 3 bunks higher up from my tier all sagged with the weight of other officers in them. Their packs simply lay over in the aisles with junk loosely attached to them, junk like muddy guns and grenades. It started to rain, like the day was not proving bad enough with the smell, the mud, the zombie company, and a miserable cot without mattress as my supposed resting place. There was no pillar either, but there were mosquitoes. Perfect. It was at that moment that I became afraid. I'd never been afraid of anything in Marine training other than the very likely fact that I might not get through to become a Marine officer. That I was second in my OCS platoon and then won the Basic School Military Skills Award had only reinforced the fact that I'd found my calling. And here I was, in absolute squalor, trapped in misery with a bunch of other men who'd preceded me and now appeared all mentally ill. What had happened and where was I really? I'd seen all the war movies through the years and I'd never seen anything like what I was in. Nothing close. Those wars and those characters had meaning, relationships, communication, and decent clothing. I had shit, quite literally. I tried to lay down but could only cower and slap at the mosquitoes. From a bunk above, a small clear plastic bottle was tossed. It landed on the wooden floor at my side with a small thunk. Repellent! Use it and then shut the fuck up! A voice yelled down from above. I leaned over and picked up the container. I presumed the voice was registering a complaint about my slapping of the insects. I rubbed the foul, oily, but strangely attractive oil onto all my exposed surfaces of my body and returned to my previous position. I passed the time as the sun set in the rain, watching mosquitoes land but not bite me, as if they somehow knew a tender morsel was available, but not how to access it. The repellent didn't repel them at all. It simply made me less edible, which was fine by me. The sun set. Only a few of the other men had flashlights or bothered to turn them on. I had nothing in my bag except some extra socks, underwear, and a useless change of street clothing, and my hard-fought, proudly worn gold bars. I waited. There would be no sleep. I waited for hours, recording each passing moment by reading the luminous dial on my special combat officer's watch I'd bought at the PX stateside for $15. At 8 o'clock, a face appeared before me. It was a man holding a flashlight so I could see his features. Welcome to the NAM, the face said, its eyes not looking at me. Chief of Staff will see you now. Another zombie, I concluded, and after hearing the welcome phrase, I was already getting tired of it. What's your rank? I asked. Buck Sergeant, the illuminated face replied, staring out into space, waiting. Then call me sir, I replied, getting out of my bunk to follow the sergeant. If you like, the sergeant said, not saying another word, certainly not sir. My first day in the welcoming Nam was over, my first night just beginning. Jim Strauss, 30 Days Has September, the first day.